Hello, welcome to the club. Today we're going to talk about something a little disappointing, and that thing is The Outsorcerer's Apprentice by Tom Holt. This is a book review for this book, and we'll do some non-spoilery comments now, and we will do more spoilery comments later. So, non-spoilery stuff. I wanted this to be really funny because it looks really funny, and the premise is really funny, and the concept is great, and I thought it was hilarious when I saw it in the store. And then I bought it, and I read it, and it was not that funny. Like, the idea is really funny, and then the in theory it's really funny, and then in practice it was really boring, which I feel bad about saying because I really wanted to like it. If anyone watching this video doesn't know what this book is, because God knows I didn't for a while, this is The Outsorcerer's Apprentice by Tom Holt. It is about Fantasyland, and basically it's like, what if the characters in Fantasyland started noticing economics and how the economy of Fantasyland, having knights fighting dragons all the time and constantly splitting the kingdom into smaller and smaller portions as each knight defeats a dragon and gets married off to somebody in the royal family and gets a section of the kingdom, that's not a sustainable business model. Which sounds hilarious. That sounds like a hilarious concept. This book is about that, and how that all works. It's also, so there's a guy called the Wizard, and he's from regular, I don't know if this is a spoiler. Let me read the back. Basically, the description of this book says that it's going to be parallel realities and a wizard and unsustainable, like, exploitative working conditions for fairy tale creatures. And it's supposed to be this, like, fairy tale creatures realizing that the way that they live is not actually that great, and that there could be some stuff changed to make things better. And it promises that on the back, and to be fair, it does follow through on that. It just does that in the most boring way that I have ever read, which is really unfortunate. So let's get into the nitty-gritty. Why did this bore the heck out of me? If you're not looking for spoilers, you should leave. But if you don't care, or if you've read the book and you want to know how I feel about it, then you can stay. It's up to you, really. So, spoilery ideas. This book has way too many characters. There are way too many viewpoint characters who don't matter. Like, they're seeing through their eyes, following them around, doesn't matter. And it would have benefited from less viewpoint characters, in my opinion. I think that the plot of this book needed some work, in the sense that it was very wandering. I spent the first, 250 pages of this 300-page book. No, it's 350. I spent the first 2/3 of this book trying to figure out what was going on, and what was the point, and what were we trying to accomplish? What was the goal of the novel? And I did not get that immediately. In fact, I did not get that until, 250 pages in. And even then, I got it in a really roundabout, look at how clever I'm being with my wordplay kind of a way that wasn't that funny. Like, it had moments of funny. There were lines that were really clever and really funny. But gosh, at what cost? 1 second, I will be right back. I have to deal with some memory card issues. And we're back. I got really close to the camera, and I realized that in this lighting and with this color palette everywhere, I look a little dead with this makeup on. Like, I look really pale with really dark around the eyes and the mouth, and I look a little dead. And I'm not sorry about that, but I just thought I'd point it out that yes, I'm very aware that my makeup makes me look a little dead right now. I look like I'm in some kind of costume. But that's fine. That's fine. Anyway, back to the book. So, yeah, boring. You know, with dragons and sorcerers and wizards and princes and Little Red Riding Hood, you'd think that it would be interesting, but it wasn't. And that sucks. And I think it comes down to the fact that the plotting was not there. There wasn't a good plot hook. The world was great, but there was no incentive for me to care about what happened next, because we were just watching people wandering the world, let's say, just going around having conversations, acknowledging that something is weird going on. Something is odd about the way that the economic model of this world is. And just continuing to wonder that, and not necessarily ever accomplishing anything. And I think that's also part of the problem, is that the book asks, the characters in the book, and the book itself, asks the same questions over and over and over again. Like, the book, the Little Red Riding Hood, her name is Buttercup in the book. Little Red Riding Hood spends the entire book saying, something is wrong here, and then having a conversation with someone else about how something is wrong, and then the other person is like, well, I don't know, it's just always been this way, and I don't really think about anything, and so, like, I don't understand the words you're saying, and, well, like, and being entirely unhelpful, and then just, they move on. Like, Buttercup doesn't get anywhere, the person she's arguing with doesn't do anything or change in any way, and she spent the whole book is just her having the same conversation with, like, different characters, and that's really annoying, in my opinion. The other thing, I found this out when I went online, and I put this on my Goodreads or whatever. This is book 3! This is book 3 in a series, and it doesn't say anywhere on the outside that it's book 3. The only way that you know that there are technically other books in the series is on the back. It lists, Donut and When It's a Jar by Tom Holt, which are the other 2 books in the series, I guess. And I don't know if these are supposed to be things that you can, like, read standalone? Like, I don't know. It could, like, it's entirely possible that you're supposed to read this as a standalone novel, and that you can read the other 2, and that, like, the other 2 will make some connections, but that they're all entirely separate. But if so, this needed some more things explained. I looked on the Goodreads reviews, and somebody made an excellent point that the concept of this book, the underlying concept, which is that there is an alternate reality space that is created by portholes through holes with food in them. Food with holes in them. I said that backwards. It's food with holes in them, like donuts, for example. Like, you look through a donut, and you end up in a parallel reality. Which is a little dumb, and also really funny. And, like, this is not really explained. There's, like, half a sentence, like, half a chapter, maybe a couple of pages, about how this works, and about what is going on with that, and how the main character, how one of the characters who is from regular London finds this U-space device, which is just a donut, I guess. Like, literally just a donut. It doesn't say that there are other technical processes that go along with looking through a donut, but it's a very special donut, I guess. I don't know. And then later on you can use any donut. It is illogical. It doesn't make sense, and I don't know if it would make sense if I read the other books in the series. But if so, you need to tell me that this is book 3, because it doesn't say anywhere on here that this is connected to anything else except for on the back. And I guess there's, like, in the back of the book, in the extras, there is a chapter from Donut, which is book 1, and a chapter from When It's a Jar, which is book 2. But, like, I feel like you should say it's book 3 somewhere on here. Like, you should mention that it's part of a series, and that the other 2 books by Tom Holt are technically part of the series. Otherwise, if they're standalone novels, just call them standalone novels. Don't call them a series at all. Which brings me to my 3rd point, and the spoilery part of this spoiler section. The ending was really boring and dull. Like, the ending is essentially all the viewpoint characters that you've been following the whole time end up in the same room together, and are all on the same side, and, like, there was half a second when one of them was working for the wizard, but, like, they've all been on the same side the whole time. Like, they're all on the same side, they're all working against the wizard, they all, like, want to make things better in this place, they're all heroes, but they all, through a series of random coincidence, meet in the same room in these tunnels, and then, like, when they all turn on the wizard, and they get the wizard, like, backed up into a corner, he poofs out of town with his backup Cheerio, which is a food that has holes in it, that he, like, looks through and disappears, because that's how teleporting works in this world, and that's the end of it. Like, that's how it ends. And he ends up on a different island and is like, well, I'll convince the natives here that I'm a god. And we just move on from there. We just move forward from that point, and it is not a very interesting or exciting or fun point. And I guess I feel like the ideas of, like, economics and politics and diplomacy, those things seem kind of boring on the outside, and when we learn about those things in school, they seem kind of boring. And I thought putting them in Fantasyland would make them more interesting, but with Tom Holt doing it, they're not. They are the same boring things, it's just that instead of saying, like, Tammy and Jeff need to talk about economics, it's like Gandalf the wizard and, you know, Florizel the prince, which is one of the characters' names, need to talk about economics. And it's just, like, it doesn't, you'd think it would be interesting. You'd think that this would be kind of trying to be like, oh, let's take these economic things and throw them in situations that are kind of unexpected, but make these concepts that people normally don't want to think about or talk about that much go together and tell a story with that, and that'll be cool. But it doesn't, and it's just boring. So yeah, on the whole, the pacing is slow. There is no real story. The characters are very flat and dull and boring by themselves, and together they are still flat and dull and boring. And this isn't just like the female characters, this is also the male characters. Normally, I feel like an author goes to a little bit more trouble, a male author in the sci-fi genre goes to a little bit more trouble to develop his male characters, but this one just didn't develop any of them. They were all really boring. Like, there was a lot of illogical leaps throughout, things that, like, don't necessarily make sense, things that weren't really explained properly. One of the main characters named Buttercup, who is Red Riding Hood, we've been over this, she, like, is constantly talking about economics, and she doesn't know how she knows about economics, and she can't explain where she got any of this knowledge. She just has this knowledge locked in her head that is spurting out of her mouth, and she knows words, but she doesn't know how she knows what they mean. And, like, half of them, like, the concepts in the explanations of what those things are, she doesn't know what they mean. And then it's kind of explained later that the other main character, Benny, who is Prince Florizel, like, accidentally brought some of the logic of regular old London with him when he came into this fantasy land, and that is causing other characters to, like, have weird thoughts and thought processes that are from that other land, but, like, he never interacted with those characters? Really? I guess he interacted with the character at the beginning of the book, but, like, he'd been around for months. And, like, it's not really explained how him being there has affected the whole world. And none of the other characters, like, really realize this, because whenever he tries to explain something, they all cut him off because they don't know what he's talking about. And it's just all 6 of these characters are operating in their own little bubble. I apologize for the revving of that car engine, because somebody decided he needed to be macho. But it is what it is. Anyway, all of these characters are sitting in, like, their own little bubble, living their own lives, thinking their own thoughts, and they don't actually interact, and their interactions with each other, when they do have physical, like, conversations, don't matter, and don't change anything, and don't mean anything. And I think that's what it is. The story carries no weight. None of the characters have weight. None of the characters go on any significant emotional journeys. There's a facsimile of an emotional journey with Benny's character, who he's coming to terms with never going back to regular London again, but that's only like the last chapter or so of the book. And like, there's a lot of really easy, simple, a lot of the time with riddles and wordplay, when like wizards or unicorns or something give people a quest and they're trying to figure out what does it mean, but like, what does this riddle mean? When she says I can't go home anymore, but that I, they try to make it complicated, and I understood it almost immediately. And the characters didn't figure it out for ages, and it wasn't really fun watching them fumbling around uselessly when I knew the answer already. Basically, I wish this had been better, because if I could recommend it to people, I would. But I can't, so I'm not gonna. I guess if Tom Holt ever sees this, I'm sorry. This is a lovely, story, this is a lovely world and concept. I just wanted more urgency, and I didn't find it. That's all from me. I hope you had a better read than I did this week. Bye-bye! That sounded like a Disney character. Who am I?